ability that if we can figure out how to do it and get the bodies together, we can get some of these stones repaired without having to spend the $1,000 that it would cost otherwise. But it's a big mission to do that.
We protect our historic homes in town, and really this should come under that umbrella of historic places and historic cemeteries. And we've been struggling with that for a little while now with our homes, and of course Thomas Lee is fully paid and has an endowment, but the other two homes struggle.
Well, we're around 100 years before them,
Well,
I mean, as owning the building, so we had a little more chance to raise a little more money.
Yeah, so we'll continue that conversation, and by all means, if there's something that we can do for fundraising or organization of your association, or something we can do. Obviously, you're going to ask for a little bit more money in the budget coming up, and you make me feel guilty just talking about it that you don't have enough. But and $1,500 is for all that you do for 19 places in town.
Cemeteries are down the bottom of the list. There are.
But then they're not forgotten.
There are other things there, not with us, but we completely understand. Money is an issue all around. But the one other thing I do want to mention, and Roseanne knows this as well and has probably addressed it before, I mentioned Flanders Cemetery and Union Cemetery. I do believe that Union Cemetery has no land left at all. They are full. Flanders is not going.
There are a few cremation spots.
Yeah, they have a few cremation. Flanders the same. They still have, a little bit of property left there heading towards, but the town had better start thinking about what they're going to do with the next generation. Not everybody's going to want to be cremated. And down the road, you might want to think we need a piece of property.
Before you leave, I wonder if you might conclude with a little story. So everyone's had the experience of driving around that nightmare around exit 75, where you go around the Rotary and then you could go one way to Waterford, or do you get on 295? Okay, there's a reason for that very crazy design.
Yes.
And that is?
Yes.
Right there.
Next time you are leaving Flanders Four Corners and you're heading to Waterford, just before you start to make the curve to go over 95, very gently look over the guardrail, and you will see a small enclosed area with gravestones.
And that
There's a cemetery there, and in order to do 95, they had to build it around the cemetery,
Tabor.
the Tabor Cemetery. Yep.
And I circled that on your map because I said, boy, that's in a funky place. I wonder where that is.
Yeah.
And that is why the design is there. So when they're talking about expansion of 95,
you better
in only a couple years,
Yeah.
that's
So
going to
make
come.
sure you
It's
all
going to
remember that there's a couple.
it's going to rear its ugly head again. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. There's some across the street too, up on the hillside by the power lines.
So the traffic jams on Sunday afternoons, we can blame on the Tabors then.
Yep. Yes, you can.
Based on the design. Wow. Thank you. Very, very informative. We good?
Mark, if you don't mind, thank you for all the work you do. I do have a story I'll share too. I've been to Max Mill Cemetery thanks to Roseanne Hardy. Back in '93, my girlfriend at the time, was doing a project for Mrs. Hardy, and my wife had to go, or girlfriend at the time had to go to Max Mill Cemetery to do some research.
I've been there.
You've been there. And we traipsed around and we took crayons and actually made prints of it. So thanks to Roseanne Hardy, I have been to that one cemetery.
Well, that was a date that wasn't a deadbeat.
Yeah, that was not a deadbeat date.
I lived on Upper Patagonia, took a walk with my wife, and we were, newlyweds and new in East Lyme, and we stumbled upon that, and we spent time in there.
It's neat. That one's a neat one.
There's some old gravestones there. It's wonderful. Now, your map shows 6.
Max Mill is still active cemetery in the sense that if you own a plot there, you can be buried there. There are still the Scott family is still being.
Oh, the Scott family.
Yeah. The same with some of the others, Riverhead Cemetery. If your family has a plot there, there are still current burials going on there.
Wow.
Stone Church, we have cremation sites, we have no full burials unless you own a plot there.
Right.
So there are still some that are,
There's a lot of plots. There's 7 cemeteries north of Upper Patagonia Lake. There might be 8 if you count Max Mill. There's many of them up on that Whistletown, Grassy Hill
yeah.
area.
So if you get a chance later, look at the board because you'll actually see
Yeah.
what some of them look like.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank
You know, Mark,
And
this-
we'll put together a date. It's late in the
Sorry.
season.
Yeah, it is kind
We'll
of
do
late,
this
you know.
offline and we'll pick a date and
Pick a
maybe
date,
it'll be
yeah.
a Friday afternoon or something. But we can go out and do that and just pray that we'll get a nice warm autumn day that we can walk around in our
This
flannel.
association reminds me of what it's supposed to be like to live in a small town. You have residents who see a need, they step up, they volunteer, and I would be remiss in not mentioning Elizabeth Murphy, who was key in starting the group and having the idea. Particularly after my students had worked on the epitaphs, got together and said, somebody's got to do something. And so that's really with Mary and Liz and a few of us got together and said, we're going to do something. So we got authorization from the town to form the Historic Cemetery Association, which we hoped at that time would open up some funding grants for us, which weren't necessarily totally funded by the town, but there's just not a lot out there. Sometimes family members who have sort of forgotten family members that are here, they've come up with a little bit of money to help with stone repair. Some of the students tried it, but it's not easy to do.
No.
And particularly once the stones hit the ground, they deteriorate fast. So hopefully there's something that we can, it's not just about
always money.
it's not just about money, but
always money.
sometimes it takes money to make things
It's
happen.
always money.
I do have a question on it. Is there a documentation of who's buried where in a lot of these? So
Yes.
if they do wear out, it will be known if there is money to repair at some point.
What we basically go by, which is sort of the Bible for anyone who is looking to find people, most of them are looking for older burials. So we use the Hale list, which I mentioned, which was done in 1934. Charles Hale started back in the turn of the century. He wanted to record all the veterans that were buried. And as things moved on, or buried in Connecticut, when it came time and the WPA, that's when that group took over what he was doing, spread out, and they recorded over 2,000 cemeteries in Connecticut. And what they did was they would go to a cemetery and they would start at one corner and just go up and down the rows.
Wow.
And just go stone by stone by stone with names and dates and ages and that. So this gives us a very good record of whom is buried where, considering many of the stones have deteriorated much more rapidly over the last 100 years than they did the 200 years before.
Yeah, what's it go?
You can see that in a number of cemeteries that are the ones that are more open or have more trees and that, which stones stayed better and which ones were destroyed. So we do have that to go by. Then once you get to the 30s and that, by then towns were keeping better records where they would list where a person was buried, because it would say Union Cemetery plot X, Y, and Z, and so you can find them that way. But before that, that's when we go by the Hale records.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Thanks again. Looking forward to putting that tour together. Fascinating. I could talk all night about this.
The story.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this, truly. Next, thank you both, ladies. And I wrote down that I never knew that Mary Cotillo was Betty Murphy's sister. Everybody's related down here in Niantic. I always say that.
Be very careful what you say about people.
I say that often. Just another piece of the puzzle. That's great. Wow. And for that problem to be identified, and then for people, you didn't even have to tell me. Of course, Betty Murphy was involved. She volunteered for everything, and thank you, ladies, as well. Discussion and possible action of Mosel Lane. Let's have a discussion. There's no action. by the way. So
Interestingly, this is a commission, but we don't appoint members. They handle their own business.
Yeah,
They keep their own records and recruit people to join.
that's great. So Mosel Lane is down in Old Black Point. And I circled it. I think you have a circle. Did you get a circle? That's the piece, right? There's a tennis court facility, and that's the long rectangle. And then there's a small road called Mosel Lane that goes to Hemingway. And from Great White Way to Hemingway, what the association at Old Black Point is asking for is for them to buy it from us for $1. That they would take out the pavement, put grass in, and they would like to build a new tennis structure, clubhouse, or a place where you might, maybe a restaurant facility or something. And they also, during the summer, that's where their summer camp is. They have kids running back and forth and tennis camp and all that. And they prefer not to have vehicle traffic there as well. I've simply said, listen, this is your neighborhood, and if there's no opposition, the town doesn't have a need to have that road there, especially if you're trying to combine it and improve the property, but that would be for a later discussion. There is one house that actually you can see halfway down on the right that is actually being rebuilt right now, and its driveway will be repositioned toward the end of Mosel Lane. But when we give Mosel Lane to Old Black Point, the assumption would be that the Old Black Point Association would give easement to that one homeowner who is in favor of this project. So the bottom line is they're just trying to remove this road so they can rebuild their little tennis hut and also keep the children safe. And it is not a major egress of transportation. There's other roads that people could travel down, and people would be well notified of this suggested removal of this portion of Mosel Lane. I believe it goes down to Old Black Point Road, and we would not take over that. It would just be that one piece between Great White Way and Hemingway Road. I'll bring you a more formal presentation in the future. I wanted to let you know, and I figured when you were out and about during this election season and you happen to be down there, that you might just drive by and see what we're talking about. It's really a tiny little road. I don't think two cars could pass at the same time. It's really just a path. And the board, their association has come to us for us to do that. The complicated part is the title search. And because it's a little bit of a mess down there with the old bond farm and all that goes on with the plots down, the plot thickens down in Old Black Point. But I wanted to bring that to you now, so you can just kind of do your research, and I'll bring you a more formalized presentation when we're ready and have cleared title and all that other stuff. Okay?
It's just a teeny little, little
It's a
stretch.
It's a teeny little stretch. Right now, they actually cone it off in the summer because we kind of let them and we look the other way. It's a nice little beach association down there. They're very isolated. So next on the agenda is to schedule a town meeting. Can you handle this, Mr. Siri?
I could try.
All right.
Town of East Lyme, notice of special town meeting. Notice is hereby given of a special town meeting of the Town of East Lyme to be held on Wednesday, November 6, 2019 at 7 p.m. in the upper meeting room at East Lyme Town Hall for the following purposes. 1, to consider and act upon a resolution to appropriate $69,000 in CNRE Fund 32 for the purchase of a new 12-passenger and 2-wheelchair bus to be utilized at the Senior Center. Delivery expected between July to October of 2020 to the account titled COA DOT 5310 bus as follows. $55,200 from the Connecticut Department of Transportation 5310 grant, and to transfer the town share in the amount of $13,800 from Fund 32, account number 32-60-120-100-002, proceeds from the sale of vehicles. And 2, to transact any other business proper to come before the meeting. Dated at East Lyme, Connecticut, the 16th day of October 2019, East Lyme Board of Selectmen.
Second.
Second. Comment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Ex officio reports. Who'd like to start?
I'll start. I went to Board of Ed for Mr. Seary the other day, and it was a good one because they had the robotics team there. Being an electrical engineer, it was pretty cool to see that, and they actually brought their robot that they compete with. It's a group between Old Lyme and East Lyme, and they compete in a pretty much a national competition to build a robot to do a specific task. And the robot's as big as us, so it was pretty neat. They did talk about something I learned is the food service that they have now that's all in-house. Salem is now part of our program, and we're actually sharing our head chef or whoever's organizing that. And I guess they've had a lot of success there, so I guess they wanted this board to know. They actually said they wanted the board to know, and it ended up in the black. So they did well with it, with this program, going independent and actually teaming with Salem. So that's good.
Terrific.
So the only other thing I could announce is the Coastal Connections Alternative High School that is part of East Lyme was moved to the Board of Education building. I think many of you know that. They're planning on having a grand opening pretty soon. This is kind of a big deal because the kids that go to Coastal Connections can take classes at the high school. Before, they had to provide transportation to them because it wasn't in walking distance. Now it's in walking distance, so they could actually go over and they have a little more of a connection if they do want to take those more advanced classes. That's all I have right now.
Thank you. Mrs. Hardy?
Pass.
Mr. Cunningham?
You know, the way the calendar fell, I didn't attend any meeting.
Okay.
My meeting this week was canceled, but look forward to our next meeting with the Public Safety Vision Committee, where we expect to have round 2 of concepts to review from the architectural firm.
Thank you. Yeah, we expect them to be, within the week, we'll be hearing back from them and have the first draft of the actual plan. I meant to thank the cemetery ladies for these great books. I was just thumbing through it. Fascinating.
They're out of print.
Yeah,
We figured
so
that.
it's a collector's item too.
Yeah, they just had,
Yeah,
Mary had a few stashed in the cupboard.
Really?
I'm very grateful. And they were printed by the East Lyme High School Graphics in the back. Mr. Siri.
Parks and Rec announced that they're doing some work now. They're replacing the fences on the Little League fields. If you go down there, you'll see some of the outfield fences are being replaced and so forth like that. And at Vets Field, they're replacing the backstop, which I understand Mr. Fanner was against because he remembers when he played baseball there, that backstop was there. So it's been there for a long time. And I'm just joking about that, but but it's doing. They are doing because we did appropriate some money for that not too long ago. So that's in progress right now. That's it.
Terrific. We started today with a 4-day shutdown of exit 74 southbound direction. That's both getting off the highway and getting on the highway in front of pools, etc. has been shut down. And it's shut down tonight at 6 o'clock. I'm sure they're not doing much rain in this northeaster that's going on, but it's due to be reopened on Sunday. Please. They're also going to be doing lots of work on Flanders Road, closing 2 lanes at a time and all that. This is the last major push of construction. As you know, Costco is due to open on November 14th. That's a Thursday, I believe. And that's an 8 o'clock ribbon cutting. You're all invited. You may want to make a note of that. I think you're going to get formal invitations to be there. I accepted a resignation and 2 retirements this week. Chris Taylor has resigned as fire marshal, and we have 2 retirements and that announced. One is Joe San Juan, longtime sergeant at the police station, and Bill Ricks, who is over at Flanders Fire Department. They're both planning on being out on November 1st. We're excited. We're going to be receiving grants from the Sustainable CT program, and we had a program here a couple of weeks ago that we learned about how to obtain these grants, but also learned that we've already reached the bronze level because of all the sustainability projects we've done over time in this town. So we kind of joined Sustainable CT and instantly qualified, will be receiving a formal award on December 3rd at the CCM convention. That I'll be there along with a few other people from our town. I have been added to the CCM committee on property tax reform. This is this is a big, I don't know if it's gonna be a big colossal waste of time, frankly, but we do need property tax reform in the state. We have the third largest, I learned, the third largest property tax in the country. And with teacher retirement liability coming in to maybe be a town liability, and also with cuts to state aid like ECS and pilot money and all that, we could be the number one highest property tax rate in the country with those two programs. So we do need reform. I've also asked for a lead role to be on the executive committee of that commission, and that will be kicking in November, and I suspect there'll be a little bit of time put in to make sure we the voice of small towns in in Connecticut are heard, and I'm looking forward to that. I met with the leaders of the Niantic Main Street program to talk about their next steps, improved crosswalks in downtown, the timing of the walk signals at the main intersection are some of the things that we were talking about. And of course, we announced that we were going to receive an improved fence that guards Amtrak in our main street, that they're going to come in with a black wrought iron, if you will, the black looking decorative fence, and we made that announcement about a week ago. Congratulations to all the walkers of the Terry Broder Breast Cancer Walk. That day was filled with activity. It was a couple Saturdays ago. There was the walkers who walked 20-something miles, and bikes for kids happened over at the Brookside Farm, where one of the B&I groups raised money and put a bunch of bikes in the barn, closed the door, inviting kids in whose family couldn't afford to buy them bikes. So from all around our region, and they had, pumpkin carving, and they were doing all sorts of fun family stuff. And then they said, hey, kids, come over. And they opened up the barn doors, and there were 24 shiny bikes there for 24 kids, and with helmets, fully outfitted, and tears and excitement, like better than a Christmas morning. It was amazing. That same day, there was this young couple that put together a fundraiser for Make-A-Wish, and that was up at the Sportsman's Club. And I forget their name, and I was trying to find it in my notes, and I couldn't. But just two people that said, you know what, we're doing this, and they have a personal connection to Make-A-Wish. But the place was packed, and people were giving money, and they had raffles, and it was a pasta dinner. Wonderful. This past weekend, there was some art up at the Bandshell, a Broadway. They did a kind of a Broadway review. The East Lyme Regional Theater group did that, and they were terrific. I went with members of the town hall to the FOI commission last Monday. We're still in that hearing where we're asking the FOI commission for relief on an FOI abuser, and that new law that went into effect. We are the test case, and we are hoping for a affirmative decision soon. I went to the first op sale meeting. Niantic will be a part of the op sale in June of next year. They'll moor the boats outside of in Niantic Harbor like they did in years past. We're trying to get a Navy amphibian to fly up onto McCook's Beach again. That might be part of it. We're working on that. This past weekend was the Oyster Fest. That was an unbelievable success. I haven't gotten the numbers yet. That night I went to the Flanders Fire Department annual banquet. David Baer and Nancy Wado received annual honors there, and we thank them for their service. I mentioned Costco's opening, and this Friday, Chamber of Commerce East Lyme Division will have their business breakfast. They do it every year, and I'll be speaking to members of the business community at Flanders Fish Market at 7:45 and I think Waterford and Old Lyme are joining in, so we'll have more people at it, and so their first selectman will be speaking as well. This is the last meeting before the last Board of Selectmen meeting before elections. I wish you all luck. But your service has been invaluable to the town. I've appreciated every bit of working with you, and I hope that we are working together in the future. Lastly, I'm going to ask both chairs of the Democrat and the Republican committee to please refrain from putting an excessive amount of signs at the community center at the high school. It's become a bit of a tradition to put all the signs out, but it's like stacked, and it's kind of I've heard from plenty of voters who don't appreciate it. We're not changing anybody's vote by putting 100 signs out on the library lawn, and frankly, there's a lot of distraction that day. There's a lot of cars coming in and out, and I think it would be safer if we asked. If you're holding a sign, if you're with your group and you're holding a sign, that would be okay, and everything else, maybe we should, first of all, it's town property. So there is that really no sign should be on town property to begin with. And maybe we could start a new tradition of respecting that and respecting the voters, that they've already made their decision and they're not based on who has the most signs. And listen, I'm guilty too. But I would like to, I might be the most guilty, but I would love to, I know I'm the most guilty, but I'd love to be able to back that down. And unfortunately, it ramps up. And I'm going to ask both parties to consider that. Obviously, when somebody puts up a bunch of signs, all the rest of this, it'll be crazy again. But maybe we can do that. Respect to the voters who have requested that. That's all I have. Are there any public delegations? Anything at all? I didn't mention, I'll throw it in because Lee Edwards is here, and he's a big traffic guy. And we're having a traffic advisory council where citizens are coming together and talking about ways to slow down traffic and get people to, consider being kinder and gentler when they're driving. We tend to be anonymous when we're in our cars and fly through. So we're trying to come up with campaigns to slow people down and remind people that if you're from East Lyme, you should respect everybody else in East Lyme and probably everybody else, period. But we're working on that. Lee's been an integral part of that. So thank you, Lee, for that. If there's no other comments from Selectmen,
I'll move to adjourn.
Second?
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Wonderful meeting, folks. Thanks for participating and being such good stewards to our town. Thanks for tuning in.
Good luck, everybody.
Good luck.